So good morning, welcome everybody to the FinOps on Azure podcast. Today I'm joined by a friend of ours at Table 360 called Andrew Matveychuk. Andrew, welcome to the podcast. Would you like to just tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Mike. Hi everybody. So my name is Andrew. I'm Ukrainian, currently living in Slovakia, and I have been managing cloud infrastructure for more than 10 years right now, and I have experience and my background in IT operations. So I still remember the times when it was MS-DOS 3.0 and Windows 95, and it was a long path from this hardware boxes, and when everything was moved to the cloud, and I saw all those challenges and experienced them myself firsthand. So
excellent.
I believe that I can share some fancy stories from my long past.
Well, that's kind of why we reached out to Andrew. So Andrew's got a few really interesting blog posts that I came across, and when you read some of the blogs, you can tell somebody who's done real work in the field about cost management and about FinOps. And I kind of wanted to give Andrew an opportunity to come and chat to us, because I wanted to learn more about some of the background to some of his blog posts and some of the stuff he's done in the field. And on the podcast, what we've been trying to do is cost management's a topic where there's different kinds of stakeholders involved, and in previous episodes we've had sort of architects, security people, FinOps people, integration people, and Andrew to me is more on the infrastructure and IT operations side, but with a really strong element of cost management in the job that he does as a day job. So I think it's really great to get all these different perspectives, and I think Andrew brings something a bit different to the people we've had on the podcast previously, which should be really good. So Andrew, you've been blogging for a while. You've got these really cool blog posts. First off, tell me a little bit about your background in terms of things like blogging and community activities that you might have done in the past.
So I have started blogging, I believe, more than 5 years ago, and I was fascinated by the ideas of Scott Hanselman, which is currently vice president in Microsoft, and also some other folks in the industry, who really taught me that it's not always how much you know, but how you can present this information to your audience, whether it be your teammates, or maybe some other people in the industry, other practitioners. And I believe it's a very valuable skill to clearly express your thoughts, because sometimes it might be hard to convince other people in the way how you would accomplish some task, and I found this funny because sometimes when I encounter a similar situation and people are hesitant that we should do it this way and not other way around, and I just point them to some of my old articles or some of my old blog posts, and people, I would say, tend to have trust in something that was written. Because when you just tell it somebody, it's okay, but I might have other opinions, but when they see that there is some article about it, there is some explanation, maybe some reasoning, so they tend to trust you more and to perceive you as a more knowledgeable person, so you don't have to spend me so much time on maybe explaining some stuff, or it's just a way of saving your keystrokes, so I'm using this famous phrase of Scott Hanselman, because we have limited time span, and sometimes you don't have time and energy explaining the same thing maybe a few hundred more times. And you understand that it's just easier maybe to take some question, and to write some article or a blog post about that question. So when it comes again, you can just like point somebody, hey, I have already talked about it, yeah, so you can check the link, yeah, to understand like what is my stance on this issue, yeah, and how it can be tackled. So
yeah. So when you blog, does it motivate you from things you've done in the real world that you just want to make a note of them and share your experience, or do you also use it for helping you learn stuff?
I would say it's both of this, yeah, like because when I started, yeah, it was like the start is always rough, yeah, and sometimes you understand like where do I get all those ideas, yeah, and like what should I write about. Yeah, but when you start practicing it, yeah, so like it comes naturally, because like most of my articles, they come from my experience. So like because like just maybe like doing some copywriting, yeah, or rewriting some stuff which is already was written by somebody or was already presented, it doesn't make a lot of sense, yeah, because like people can easily tell whether you are authentic person, yeah, and just trying to bring your message to your audience, yeah, or whether you just like faking something, yeah, or just trying like to sell them something. And I would say that my primary motivation was because I'm not a native speaker, yeah, and English is not my native language. My primary motivation back then was to practice my writing in English, yeah, like to improve it as much as possible, so I don't have like to spend a lot of time on like looking into some grammar rules, into some vocabulary. But later then it transformed into just my desire to share my experience, yeah, because like sometimes you have like quite interesting stories you would like to share, yeah, and sometimes you might not have somebody to talk about those stories, yeah. And by putting those stories in writings, you can share them like with all the world, yeah, because internet changed everything in the communication, and like you don't have like to go to any publisher or like to any editor stuff and wait for your like ideas to be approved for publishing, because you can self-publish, yeah, and like you're free to share your thoughts like with all the people.
Yeah, it eventually just becomes fun as well, doesn't it? After a while, you kind of really get in the swing of it.
Especially when you have feedback, yeah, especially when people come back. And I find it funny because there are some articles that I wrote maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, yeah, and people email me and ask questions about those stuff.
yeah. Or you find you solve your own problem, you go to a customer and you're searching for the solution, and it's your own blog articles. My favorite one.
yeah, because like it helps people to find solution for their problems, yeah. And what is more, I use my blog like as my journal.
Yeah.
Sometimes there might be some interesting issue or some interesting design or some like interesting topic to talk about, yeah, and like I try to put it into writing, because sometimes when I just Google for some stuff on the internet, I just came across my old blog post and it just like rings the bell. Oh, I already wrote about it, yeah. So and I just forget how it should be configured and how it should be done. And sometimes I just use my old blog post as my work notes when I have the same issue and I just forgot like what kind of configuration should be applied actually to resolve it, or what kind of troubleshooting is required in that case.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about when you're in your kind of typical role. How does cost management play into the kind of the job that you usually do?
I would say that it's not something uncommon, yeah, in an everyday work, yeah, of like any IT professional who work with cloud environments, because I would say it's the same as with DevOps, for example, yeah, because like some people consider DevOps to be a role, which is not a role specifically, but like it just became of somewhat role because they use like DevOps as a job title, yeah, and some companies believe that like if they name somebody to be a DevOps engineer or like FinOps engineer, they like implemented this practice and they're just fine. They just relax, yeah, because like it's already there, yeah. But it doesn't work this way. So because it's a team sport, yeah, and usually you have like lots of involved parties, and like very often they have quite like opposite goals, and like they might pull like the project in different directions. And managing cost for cloud resources, I would say it's a team sport, because
actually that's my quote of the day today. Actually, FinOps is a team sport. I love that.
Yeah, because it's not about like FinOps as a process. It's not about like FinOps like as a dedicated team who will be like constantly seeking opportunities to reduce your like cloud bill, yeah, and just like to make your cloud infrastructure as lean as possible. Because like there are just too many opportunities and like too many, I would say, unique situations that can be applied to reduce cost for your cloud consumption.
Yeah, I get you. So so tell me a little bit about some of the things you've done, sort of specifically on a customer project. Which sort of cost areas tend to come up the most for you?
I would say that like the most common area I encounter is that usually it's a question not when companies start using cloud infrastructure, whether it be Azure Cloud or AWS Cloud or Google Cloud Platform, but when they like transition it like to the next level of like their cloud journey. Yeah, they already have some presence in the cloud. They might some presence in maybe in some like on-premises data centers, yeah, or somewhere else, and they find out that those promises, yeah, of like significant cost saving, yeah, some like big reductions in your like total cost of ownership, they don't fit their expectations.
Yeah.
And I would say the primary reason is that many, I would say, cloud providers, they promote approach like to make fast onboarding to cloud infrastructure. So like first, like you do like lift and shift migration for your existing workloads. So basically, like you take your virtual machines that you run in your on-premises Hyper-V or VMware hypervisors, and you just put the same virtual machines in your cloud environment, yeah, and like they now in the cloud, and like you have cloud infrastructure right now. But in reality, it's not cloud infrastructure and not cloud adoption, yeah, in the real sense. It's just like an expensive virtual hosting like 2.0. Yeah, you just move it your virtual workloads, like your virtual machines from your on-premises data centers to the cloud. And yeah, you like reduced your capital expenses, yeah, because you don't have to invest like in your physical servers, in your UPS, into your power supplies, and now you have just shifted your expenses from capex to opex.
Mm-hmm.
But that opex stuff, it tend to increase significantly over a very short period of time. Yeah, and many companies, many people, they got surprised because like they were promised significant cost savings, yeah, but the reality turns to be quite different. And usually that is the time when they turn to like different FinOps practices, to IT folks, and usually it's I would say people who manage infrastructure, they're first to be asked that question.
Yeah, so really what you see in practice is really that it's sort of like stage 2 or 3, they start typically thinking about cost when they've not met their expectation, and if maybe they moved it earlier in the life cycle and think about it from the start, then you would be more likely to hit those expectations, I guess.
Yeah, and like basically like there are quite well documented pathways, how you should like perform your migration to the cloud, how you plan your cloud adoption. So there are like those well-known like well architecture frameworks, cloud adoption frameworks. But in reality, not so many companies they use those frameworks from the start, because they might not have enough experience with migrating workloads to clouds, and making this like complete shift in their vision, how they see their infrastructure. Because like when used properly, cloud infrastructure is completely different from what you get used when you were running your services. Like your physical boxes in your server room on premises, when you manage it, all those wirings, power supply, your ISPs. So it's not the same anymore, and there are like completely like different challenges for cost savings in the cloud from what you might have experienced when managing on-premises resources.
So when you work with a customer, then, so let's say you've done part of your cloud migration, obviously you then hit the point where the customer said, "Oh, this isn't really meeting my expectations on cost." What are the sort of remediations or the strategies that you start to think about to try and tackle that problem?
There is like a famous I would say frameworks with 5 R's, like rehost, rebuild, maybe some remove something, and like to see whether like you should maybe move some workloads from the cloud like to some other hosting options, because they might not fit the cloud model. But in most of the cases, what is expected is some fast results. And what I have found out like to be more practical approach, is to basically like follow like quite simple plan. So first you should identify what are your primary cost drivers in the cloud, because depending on like what kind of workloads you have, whether it be like virtual machines, whether for example you have a lot of app services, or maybe you run a lot of SQL databases, or any kind of workloads in the cloud, you should identify like what types of cloud services consumes most of your money that you allocate for spending on your cloud infrastructure. And after that, depending on like what kind of optimizations are available for those resources, you might come up with a proper plan. So just to give you an example, so like it's a common that many companies they still run a lot of virtual machines in the cloud, and there might be like different reasons why they need to run those workloads as virtual machines, as Azure VMs, for example. It might be maybe some legacy software which is not supported like on other, I would say, hosting options. It may be some regulatory requirements. It may be just lack of funding, and companies might not have enough time actually like to update or rebuild their software so they can basically like move their application from a virtual machine, for example, to an app service or to a function app, or like to a container. So they just don't have developers right now, or they don't have funding, or they don't have like project to accomplish those goals, basically like to transform that workload. And thankfully we have lots of capabilities how we can even apply some good cost saving strategies even in those situations, because there are like such things, for example, as reservations, and they exist, like to my understanding, like in all major cloud providers. So for example, in AWS you have AWS savings plans, in Azure you have reservations, and like from the last years you also have like Azure savings plans, which are quite similar to the optimization model with AWS savings plans. And it's like their basic idea that like you might say, okay, fine, I understand that like I have that like huge cloud spend for those resources, but can I get better pricing for them? So can I have some discount, because I understand that I will need to have those like heavy virtual machines to be present in the cloud, maybe like for a year, or maybe like for a couple of years, and I'm just not ready like to make my next move, my next step, basically like to redesign or rewrite my applications so I can get rid of running them in virtual machines. And basically most cloud providers, they would provide you with discounts based on your commitment. So you explicitly tell your cloud providers that, hey, I'm committing for this level of consumption. So I will run like X number of virtual machines, and like I will consume like that number of compute hours. Yeah, can I have better pricing? And it's like a win-win strategy, because a cloud provider like Microsoft Azure, they understand that like, okay, we have like these commitments from our like clients, from our customers, and basically that allows them to plan their like data centers accordingly. So it's just like a basic of capacity management, which is like if you heard of ITIL methodology. So it's just like one of the processes that should be implemented when managing your infrastructure, when you manage capacity for your infrastructure. So when there is like a business demand, you are ready to meet that business demand. So like you have just enough spare capacity when, for example, you need to deploy a new application and you don't have to wait like weeks or months before like another physical box is delivered to your data centers. And you can like deploy that application like in a matter of like hours or days.
So I think it sounds like what you're saying is if I think of my cloud journey, I lift, for most companies you're going to lift and shift just to get into the cloud, but then really to get the maximum benefits, you really want to move towards a cloud native option. But obviously that takes a lot of changes to your applications. So the kind of the savings plan and reservation options are kind of like a stopgap to get your savings while you think about what your next step after that's going to be.
Yeah, exactly. I would compare it like when somebody wants to have good physique. So like making that first step is basically like buying your like annual subscription for gym membership. But like because of you bought this gym membership subscription, like it doesn't mean that like you will have good physique. You need to go to the gym, you need to exercise regularly, you need like to establish healthy routines, to establish all those like healthy lifestyle practices to achieve your goal. So like just migrating your workloads, like doing that lift and shift migration, it's just buying your gym membership. But it's not about like you cannot buy your good physique. You need to put effort in that, and that's what many companies and like many people, like to my mind, they still fail to understand that. So I try to use those like real life analogies, to explain this concept, because like,
it's a really good way of doing it. So what about things like hybrid benefit? Because you wrote a few blog posts about using hybrid benefit. How does that play into this journey when you're sort of starting to think about reservations and savings plans?
So basically, like when we were talking about reservations, this is just one of the practices. It's not a primary practice, but just one of good practice, to look into when you want to save on your like compute workloads, or on basically on your like infrastructure layer, on your storage, on your compute, or on something that like you would like to reserve some capacity. With hybrid benefit, it's just a different way when you can save on licenses, because you have your server, which is like a physical or virtual box, and you pay for it. And also when you have your software, you need to run that software on something, and it's quite often includes some third-party software, which is like paid or subscription-based software, for example. And in case with Microsoft, they provide a lot of their software on subscription-based approach. So like, because like it was more like pay once in the past, but like more and more companies, they move to subscription-based approach, because like it's like how companies, and how flexible you can be, because like you can cancel that subscription at any time, and for example, if you use it your software maybe like for only 2 months from a year, you don't have to pay like the full price. You pay just a fraction of it. So back to hybrid benefit. So in essence, hybrid benefit is an ability when you already have a license agreement with Microsoft. It can be enterprise agreement or like open license agreement, when you already own license with Microsoft, and it's subscription based. So you have software insurance package. So basically like you pay for your license usage like on an annual basis, and you want to use those licenses in the cloud. It's very helpful when companies migrate their workloads, because like when companies they run their workloads on premises, they have like Windows Server licenses, they have SQL Server licenses, they have like I don't know, maybe some other licenses, and when they start migrating their workloads in the cloud, when you, for example, provision an Azure VM in cloud, and when you look into the cost breakdown, you can see what fraction is actually hosting cost, and what you pay additionally as a Microsoft Windows Server license, and because you already own that license, Microsoft allows you to explicitly tell them that, okay, I already paid for that license, so like I don't need to pay twice. And because it is the same virtual machine that was licensed on premise, and I just want to use that license as benefit in the cloud, because I'm just moving those virtual machines in the cloud. And I believe it's a great way to reduce your initial investment, because you don't have to overpay for your licenses, because during the migration phase, your license cost it doesn't increase too much.
So Andrew, tell us a little bit about some of your favorite stories from your sort of career and journey where they've had an interesting cost element to them.
So basically, I would tell that it comes from my recent experience working with like a large manufacturing company. So, and by large, I mean that they have like over like 1 million cloud spend every month, and they have multi-cloud infrastructure. So they host their workload in Azure Cloud and in AWS Cloud. And it's a classic example when company thought that like just moving to the cloud would decrease their infrastructure spend, and it turned out to be quite opposite from what they used to think. And they ended up with running a lot of virtual machines in the cloud. So basically, I would say that they're like in their like second stage of cloud adoption, when they already have moved lots of workloads to the cloud, but those workloads they still run on virtual machines, and they, I would say, overpay a lot for running those workloads on virtual machines instead of using like more flexible and more cloud native options. And I found that example quite fascinating, because it's just a classic example of I would say cloud cost issues that you might encounter. So like I would say it's the most common that I have seen like across like different clients I've worked with, and there are like many different I would say aspects of the issues. So basically like companies might have like virtual machines in different families, like different sizes. They might provision them in different locations. So those virtual machines might be over provisioned. So basically like those virtual machines might be running like around the clock when it's not necessarily. Those virtual machines might not be provisioned properly, because there are like production workloads and there are like some test workloads, and many people are not aware that like for test workloads there is like a separate specific subscription type, which is called like dev test subscription. When you provision a resource in that subscription, you basically don't have to pay for a license. So when you provision the same virtual machine in a production subscription and in dev test subscription, the price difference might be quite significant, because in dev test subscription you don't have this license cost for the virtual machine, but the drawback that you don't have service agreement in the dev test subscription, because it's not backed up with Microsoft SLA, and you don't have those guarantees from Microsoft that they ensure that this virtual machine will run as expected to their defined service level agreement. And the same is true about, for example, with databases, because it's also a common example when many companies, they migrate their SQL servers and they do it on a virtual machine basis. So basically they put their virtual machine with a SQL server and migrate it to the cloud, and it's just the same virtual machine and SQL server packet inside that virtual machine, when there are other more flexible option, for example, in the cloud, which allows you to cut that unnecessary part, I mean virtual machine, and to reduce your cost for running your SQL databases in the cloud. And I'm talking about thousands of dollars every month. And plus,
so can I ask you a question on that, Andrew? Actually, so how much do you, when you see customers doing a lift and shift, with things like databases, how much do you feel customers will move, say, a SQL VM from being a VM to a PaaS database? Because that's probably one of the easier sort of refactorings you can do potentially. And then obviously you get some of the benefits on the PaaS database of the simplified sort of availability and restore options and stuff like that. Is that something that you feel customers leverage effectively, or is it something you think they maybe miss out on?
I would say that on the surface, it's look obvious. So why should we migrate virtual machine to virtual machine when we can use just Azure SQL database or Azure SQL managed instance or Azure Synapse for analytics workloads? But the reality is usually quite different. So with some simple workloads and with some small and medium companies, it's usually obvious and is quite common migration path. But with large companies enterprise scale companies, the primary roadblock for that is that many companies use SQL Server and integration services in their scenarios. And that feature is not present in platform as a service solutions provided by Microsoft. Because they use SQL integration services to execute their ETL jobs, to extract some data, to maybe transform it, to upload to their target database. And many companies, as I said, they just might not understand those complications on their migration path when they plan their migration. And to move from SQL on your Windows server to Azure SQL database or Azure SQL managed instance, you should plan accordingly. So you should understand how you're going to migrate those ETL jobs, and what kind of Azure services you can use instead of SQL Server integration services to achieve the same goal. And you need to have maybe some data analysts or database administrators or people who can modify your application layer. And many companies, they perceive cloud migration as purely infrastructure stuff. So they even don't think and even don't budget that they need to involve software engineers or maybe some people with database management experience or data analytics experience into that cloud journey. And when they encounter that roadblock, it's usually a dead end, and because, for example, there is no budget, it wasn't budgeted, And they're okay, then we will just move on as it is, yeah, and we will come back to that later, and they actually never come back. Back
so even though excuse me so I guess even though we have data factory support and SSIS packages, it's still there's kind of other hurdles get in the way because the customer didn't plan for having to do that, because the impact assessment maybe thought it was just pure lift and shift and that they wouldn't have to deal with those problems, I guess.
Yeah, to some extent, and plus how I would say cost ownership is managed in the company. Yeah, like how company like whether company uses some like form of chargebacks to like different cost centers, like who are the owners of those like budgets. Yeah, and it's quite often when you might have lots of line of business applications and they have assigned owners, but those owners, they are not IT people. They know nothing about like cost optimization in the cloud, and then they don't have any kind of I would say infrastructure or development resources to transform those applications into like more cloud native solutions. And they basically end up in this like never-ending loop because they don't have resources to perform that migration, and they don't have budget to perform the migration, so they still stuck in the dead end when they just overpay for those like I would say suboptimal solutions that were migrated to their clouds. I would say suboptimal hosting options.
And do you think, like, in your experience, is that something customers just live with moving forward, or how often do you think they come back to them and sort of address some of them problems in the future?
I would say that usually customers come back to that issue when they see that like their annual increase in cloud spend is quite significant. Yeah, because they continue their migration, they like move more and more resources to the cloud. Yeah, and when they see that actually they pay for cloud hosting more that they paid for their like infrastructure like in their previous form, like on premises. So that's usually when they come back and start looking into ways how to optimize it. Yeah, and I believe that it's great. I really should say that Microsoft really excels in it. Yeah, because Microsoft as a company, they have quite strong support. Yeah, for migration purposes. Yeah, and like usually like for a company who works with Microsoft Azure Cloud, yeah, they have dedicated account managers. Yeah, and they are ready like to pull some resources from Microsoft. They ready to provide expertise. They even ready to provide you with some engineering resources, yeah, to smooth that migration, yeah, like to kick off that migration and to help you like to execute those like complex steps, yeah, like just to transform, for example, your ETL jobs from SQL Server integration services, yeah, and migrate them to Azure Data Factory. And the next, I would say, level of complication which comes to play is how budget owners are stressed. So how much pressure is on them to reduce their cloud cost. So basically, when there is enough vision, enough leadership from the top management, yeah, when they constantly push budget owners like to reduce their cloud cost, and plus they are presented with some like opportunities how it can be done. And how they can motivate those like cost center owners and budget owners actually to take that extra mile, to take that extra step, yeah, and put some effort into optimizing their cloud footprint.
That's really good. Andrew, I think we're just about coming up to time. We usually do about 40-45 minutes for the podcast. Is there any sort of things that you're kind of doing community-wise at the moment, or blogging-wise, you'd like to share with the audience as maybe something they might find interesting to check out?
So for example, I have recently worked quite extensively with some capabilities, how to audit your usage of Azure reservations, your Azure savings plans, and how you utilize your Azure hybrid benefit. Because there are some solutions provided by Microsoft, but these are usually in form of Power BI reports, and like you need to be somewhat proficient with using Power BI to analyze how effectively you use those optimization strategies, and how much of your infrastructure is covered with those benefits. And I thought like that it might be great to use some Azure native tools, some tools which are available on the Azure portal, so you don't have to like open just another window, and you can have the same information when, for example, you work in the Azure portal. And I must say that I'm really glad that Microsoft transitioning from those like multiple APIs that it used to provide for cost management, because there was like a separate API for cloud consumptions, a separate API for some reservations, separate API for some other stuff, and currently Microsoft is consolidated all those different APIs, and just moving everything into like one subset of like cost management API, so you can leverage those APIs like using like services like Azure Monitor workbooks, for example, like I tried used in my case, or you can come up like with any kind of solution you would like, so you can use those like Azure functions, you can use the same Azure SQL database, you can use Azure storage to pull that data, to store it in somewhere, to do some analysis, to come up with quite interesting capabilities to and find some quite interesting insights how you can optimize even more on your cloud spend. But the drawback, that like you need to be quite experienced in using those cloud services and to know lots of those nuances, and basically understand how those optimization strategies they work in practice. And I would say that it's really time-consuming work. So like in many cases, I would say that like in 80% of cases, it makes more sense to look maybe for some ready-to-use solutions. For example, like Turbo 365, or Cloudability, or any kind of like third-party solution, which already like does the job. So it might be not so flexible as a custom built solution, and it might not provide you with like 100% optimization, but quite often you don't need to optimize your cloud spend like 100%, and
there's big savings in small chunks, isn't it?
Sometimes it's just enough like when you can achieve like 10% saving, 20% saving, like 30% saving is already significant. And for that, you should definitely look for other solutions and evaluate them for your specific purposes, because different solutions, they have like different capabilities, and depending on your cloud landscape, what kind of workloads you use, what is the pattern of how you use those workloads. Like different solutions might provide different capabilities. And for example, in my practice, for example, with my last client, because of that huge part of infrastructure as a service cloud workload, it was quite beneficial for them to find the solutions that would allow them to automatically right-side those virtual machines. So like you don't have like to implement that after scaling per machine basis, and invest a lot of effort in configuring those auto scaling rules, and to come up with your custom built automation, and I would say that there are pretty good solutions currently on the market that would allow you to monitor the actual utilization of your cloud workloads, and automatically like scale them up or scale them down based on the actual compute demand, or the actual demand for the infrastructure. And in many cases, it might be even more significant than applying like reservations, savings plans, because when you consume less, you pay less, and like even when you pay your reservation, you can reserve less workload, so basically you pay for reservation which is applicable to your reduced workload and not the previous, I would say, over provisioned workload you had before such optimization. So
sounds really good.
So I would say that observability and automation, to my mind, is the key approach to optimize your cloud spend right now.
Yeah, these things go hand in hand, don't they? So I think we're just about time, Andrew. Thank you for joining us today. That was a really insightful conversation, actually. Now, I think I've got about 4 ideas you've given me just from listening to you talk about your experience. So that's thank you for your thoughts there, and I hope everybody else has a lot of good things to think about and enjoy our conversation. So thank you for listening to FinOps on Azure podcast, and we look forward to the next episode. Take care, everybody.